I think we'll try to mimic it. But yeah, I got it. I got it. That's why this is helpful too. All right, man. First of all, I'd like to say we appreciate you pulling up. Something I feel is long overdue, and time to put things to action, particularly with the climate that we're dealing with. So, if you would, man, just go ahead and introduce yourself, everybody.
Absolutely. My name is Chad Johnson. I currently serve as the assistant men's basketball coach at Oklahoma Christian University, as well as the director for intercultural development.
Wow. So, how long have you been in those positions?
So I've been coaching at OC for 4 years, and then I just recently took on the role of director of intercultural development 2 years ago. So I've been doing both now for the last 2 years.
Right on. So, what in your personal life do you feel like led you to end up in the role as being the leader of men, one, but also a facilitator of change and diversity?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I think when I look back over my life, I've been the beneficiary of people investing in me. And I can honestly say that I wouldn't be where I am now without the intentionality and just the conscious decision of people taking the time to pour back into my life. So I've always loved basketball, but even more to that point, I've always felt the need to try to help people. And so I feel like now at 31, my job, my responsibility, my calling is really just to try to help people get where they want to get. And whether that be basketball related or even just educationally and professionally, I've always seen myself as a dot connector or somebody that can bridge the gap between where somebody is and where they want to be.
Oh wow! I mean, you certainly have your why down for sure. So, I mean, what do you think happened to get you where you are today? I mean, obviously, I never even playing basketball and competitively in any any form couldn't just walk into a prestigious college like yours and get the job. So, what's your background in basketball? How'd you get from A to B?
Man, I've been around the game of basketball since as long as I can remember. My dad put the ball in my hands when I was real young, and I was fortunate enough to have fallen in love with that sport specifically, which opened up opportunities for me to go on and play collegiately. And then from then, I really felt a calling to get into coaching simply because I loved the game and thought that I had an IQ for the game. And so that spurred me to take on opportunity and take a leap of faith to really jump into coaching. Once I got out of school, I was able to get a job at a local high school in the Nashville, Tennessee area. And then that year specifically was pretty eye-opening because I had some early success. I thought, man, I could really do this. I'm pretty good at this and I enjoy it. And so from there, I took another leap of faith and actually moved to Dallas, where I was fortunate enough to work with the Dallas Mavericks. And from there, I was able to latch on at the University of Central Oklahoma. And that was very, very pivotal for me because it was my first experience coaching collegiately, and you would think me having the opportunity to work at the professional level would supersede that. But the reality is coaching collegiately gave me the opportunity to really be hands-on, really feel like I was making a difference because I'm around guys who are in a situation that I really was just freshly removed of being in college. And so I felt like that was an opportunity for me to really get my hands dirty, really try to connect with these guys and really try to make a difference. And so I was there for 2 years before moving on and being here at Oklahoma Christian. And so I say all that to say basketball has been an integral part of my life. One, because I love the sport, but two, it's allowed me to build relationships. And one thing I've come to know is that relationships are everything. And being able to cultivate those relationships is something that I don't take lightly and something that I'm very, very intentional about. And however I can use basketball to open up doors for not only myself, but for other people is something that I've been very, very privileged to do. And so basketball, like I said, is something that I love. It's something that I've really grown to appreciate, not just because of the sport itself, but for the opportunities that it's afforded me.
Yeah, yeah. I could tell the way you speak about it. I could tell you're extremely passionate about it. What role does that passion play in your life, and how does it allow you to stay true to your integrity when it's tested? Because I can only imagine. I mean, kids grow up with basketball and they see, oh, the fast life, they see popularity, they see a lot of fun, a lot of partying. How do you hone that in to continue to be driven to do the work that you do now?
Yeah, I would say that to what you're saying about basketball providing luxuries in life, and especially at the highest level, the one thing that I do know is that if you look at it that way, you can often be misled. But I am very confident in the fact that I know that basketball is simply a vehicle. It's an opportunity to open doors and then obviously potentially change lives. But I do know specifically it can help you get from one place to another. And so for me, I've really tried to just be a conduit for that and really try to help guys who play basketball and enjoy the game, see that they can be something beyond a basketball player, be able to use basketball to change their lives, not just playing the game or dribbling a basketball, but being able to go on, get a degree, set themselves up for the next 40 plus years.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and I want to kind of harbor on that getting a degree part. You know, my experience, I went to NAIA school, and my dorm was right suite mates with the basketball players, and it seemed like once we get through tournament season, it never failed. Sometimes we didn't see them anymore if it didn't turn out right. So I mean, what can you speak to if I'm a young guy coming in, playing ball, doing it at a pretty good level, and I'm at a school? How important is it? What does continuing that education? What does that give to me for the future?
I think that for me, my job is to try to help instill and help add to what you may already have in terms of life skills. Like I said, basketball is really just a vehicle to help you get from point A to point B. The reality is that there's a small percentage of basketball players who go on to make life-changing money playing the game of basketball. And when I say a small percentage, I mean less than 1%. And so the reality is that the majority of the guys who play basketball or young women who play basketball won't be afforded those opportunities to play professionally. And so it's a matter of how do I leverage this game, leverage this opportunity to really change my life for the better in other aspects. And so I really try to challenge guys to understand that while you may have the aspirations and the dreams to play basketball for as long as possible, the reality is the ball will stop bouncing. And so at that point, you have to decide who you want to be and what you want your life to look like outside of basketball. And I was able to kind of figure that out for myself pretty quickly. Once I got to college, I recognized that, man, I'm not big enough and I'm probably not good enough to go play beyond these 4 years. And so reality for me was eye-opener pretty quickly. And so I was fortunate enough to have a foundation, a support system behind me that helped keep me grounded. And I was also a beneficiary of some assistant coaches like myself now who were able to really pour into me and to challenge me and to really empower me to try to see beyond the four lines on the court. Because at the end of the day, like I said, the ball will stop bouncing. And so once that ball stops bouncing, how do you keep moving on? How do you keep progressing so that you can be a difference maker in society?
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And we'll kind of play with a little crystal ball here, or maybe a little DeLorean time machine. If you could, the cliche question, if you could go back and change one thing in your career trajectory, what would that be?
Man, that's a great question. I don't actually know if I've ever thought about that. If I could go back and change one thing about my career trajectory, I would say even before I ventured on this professional journey, I would want to go back and be more intentional about what I wanted my life to look like. I think while I feel like I had a lot of things set in place when I was in school, going through college, the reality is once I graduated, I was very unsure of what was next. And I don't think that's uncommon for a lot of people, but I really didn't have a plan or a vision of what I wanted my life to look like. And so naturally, I kind of latched on to the first opportunity. Being as it may, the first opportunity I got professionally was not in basketball. It was actually in the corporate finance world. And so I got to where I am now by the grace of God. But I would love to think that if I was a little more prepared and had a little more foresight into what I wanted to do long term, I might be doing something different. But at the same time, I don't take where I'm at for granted. I take everything as a blessing because I truly try to be where my feet are. But I think that if I was to be a little more intentional about maybe what I wanted my life to look like, I could have taken some better steps and maybe position myself a little differently.
That's interesting. I hear you attribute your life in the state that it's in and the happiness that you have to God, as well as I've noticed you're extremely active in your church. You're a man of faith. And, again, we talk about from hanging out in Dallas, working for the Mavericks, playing ball, and now working at Oklahoma Christian, a school of faith. Tell me about that. Tell me about your faith journey to this point.
Yeah, it's simply that, like you said, it's a journey. I would love to think that I've always had the disposition that I have now, but that's not the case. And it's taken me years to uh, reinforce what I was taught and really refine what I know now. And it is a constant journey. And so I think that right now I'm at a stage in life where I can truly attribute everything that I have gained, lost, missed out on, and anticipating to God's timing. And so that's why I said, amongst all of that, the only thing I can truly do is be present. And I think there's a scripture that I really hold on to that speaks to me. And it talks about being content in every situation. I believe it's Philippians 4 and verses 11 and 12, and just having the appreciation for the good and the bad, the ups and the downs, the haves and the have nots. And so when you can truly embrace that and understand that at the end of the day, I'm not in control of anything, and everything that I have been given and everything that I've lost, it's all been a lesson. It's all been a testament, and it's truly trying to figure out where God really wants me to be. And so I think that once I started to understand that and really embrace that, it's helped me truly find who I am, and it's truly helped me figure out what God wants me to be.
Yeah. Yeah. What what advice would you give someone that was struggling to balance their ambition with their integrity?
Wow. I think the one thing that I do know about balancing aspirations and ambitions and your integrity or who you are is that at the end of the day, you are the only one that can live with the decisions that you make. And so you have to get to a point where you're making those decisions for you, not for what it might look like, not for what it might garner you, not for what might sound good, but truly for what you want for your life. And obviously that goes back to what I just said about leading a life that you feel can be fulfilling to not only yourself, but more importantly to God. And so having the drive and the desire for more is natural. I think that that's a healthy trait to always want to continue to progress and continue to improve and continue to want to better yourself, but also understanding that you can't get to tomorrow today. You know what I mean? Like, I truly have found in my own life that as ambitious as I am, the reality is I haven't gotten any opportunity that wasn't for me. All of the jobs, all of the opportunities, all of the connections that I've made, I truly believe were divinely ordained. And so when I think about that, I have to consider that same logic when things may not be going the way I want them to go. And so it is a balance. It is a constant, internal struggle to some degree. But I think when you rip everything apart and you really scale back, that's what I go back to, understanding that I am where I'm supposed to be. And when it's time for me to be where I'm next supposed to be, I'll be there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So switch gears for a bit. What do you do for fun?
I'm kind of a mixed bag when it comes to things that I'm interested in. A lot of people don't know that I'm I'm a nerd. I actually enjoy reading. I don't read as much as I probably should, but I do enjoy reading. What I would consider a relative fitness junkie. I like to work out. I try to stay healthy. I'm obviously a sports fanatic. I enjoy playing video games as of recently. And I really just enjoy spending time with my family. I would like to think that I'm an okay golfer. I just picked that up too in my spare time. But anything that keeps my mind going is something that I'm always going to be interested in. And I enjoy spending time really just relaxing when I can.
Mm, yeah, that's good. So avid reader, if we were to have the next guest get some information from you, what book would you
The
recommend?
Alchemist,
Really?
Paulo Coelho.
Really? Yeah.
Aside from the Bible, it's by far the best book I've read. It's probably the most life-changing book that I've read to this point. It just specifically resonated with me at the point in time in my life when I read it. But I think even going back now, rereading it, I can always pick up something. And I think that it's applicable in a lot of different aspects of life. It really just centers around the journey of life. And that within itself is a conversation that can go a lot of different ways. But I think that book specifically can really help impact somebody's life for the better.
Wow. Well, we'll write it down and we're going to pass it along for sure. So, so director of multicultural at Oklahoma Christian. So, what does that look like? What are you charged with? What do you do?
I mean, I would love to give you a super philosophical description of what I do in that role. I try to simplify it as being a voice for the voiceless and really empowering our students, specifically our students of color. I think that that's one thing that I really take great pride in is making sure that they felt seen, felt, and heard. And so within my responsibilities, I oversee all of our multicultural organizations. I try to put together events and really show up for their events. But more than anything, I just really want them to know that they have somebody there that can advocate for them, that can speak on their behalf and support them whenever they have needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, representation is important, and honestly, that's a big reason why we're sitting here today. Whether we realize it or not, there's a young Chad out there,
Absolutely.
and the way that we deal with now, we consume content. I don't know that the younger generation would approach quote unquote the old heads if they wanted advice. They kind of like to get it a la carte. So how is that right now in this climate when you notice there may be a student under your charge, right? Or even and you're at their service, what would you say to them to kind of let them know what you're here and what you're about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as I reflect on my responsibility, my role in that position, I can't help but think back to myself when I was in school, because I know what it's like to be a minority on a predominantly white institution. And so I truly try to empathize with them on that aspect, because I think that at the end of the day, no matter what you look like, honestly, there is an innate desire for everybody wanting to be acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to at least make sure that they know that. And I want them to know that if nothing else, that they have somebody that they can go to. They have somebody that can advocate for them, and they have somebody that's willing to speak up on their behalf if needed. Because so often we go through life, and regardless of where you are in your journey, I think that there's opportunity for everybody to be a beneficiary of somebody reaching out and looking out for them, or whether it be a mentor or a family member or a coach or whomever it is. I think that that's at the end of the day the essence of life, trying to find ways to take people along with you and push them forward. And some aspects you have to pull them, right? And so I think that's ultimately what I want my legacy to be, is somebody who always looked out for somebody else, somebody who tried to empower other people, somebody who was willing to step up and speak, and not only speak, but advocate for people who might not have other opportunities to be advocated for.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. So, I mean, with that, what kind of projects do you have coming up in your program?
Yeah, so obviously we're coming off of Black History Month in February, and I was fortunate enough to be in some conversations and a part of the planning for that. And one big event that I'm looking forward to is our opportunity to take a trip to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and visit Black Wall Street, where we'll be able to go to the Greenwood Cultural Center. We'll be able to go to the Greenwood Rising Museum, and we'll be able to hang out in the Greenwood district there in Black Wall Street and be able to take in a great lunch at a local soul food restaurant. But obviously, the highlight of that trip will be being able to go to the Greenwood Rising Museum, which for a lot of people they're unfamiliar with what took place in Tulsa during the Tulsa riot and the Black Massacre on Black Wall Street. And so I'm excited about that trip. We went last year. It was a great time. I know a lot of the students were just taken aback with the history that they didn't really know about, and myself included. And so I think for me, that opportunity just to be able to give them the chance to go on that trip free of charge is something that I don't take lightly, something that I'm really excited about because at the end of the day, it is American history. Whether we want to accept it or not, it happened. And so being able to have the just the opportunity to really walk the same streets that were once destroyed and burned down to the ground, and then be able to really see and feel what transpired some 100 years ago in our backyard is something that I'm very, very excited about and very, very appreciative of.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's monumental. What do you hope at the end of the trip, on your way back, everyone steps off the bus? What do you want them to come away with after having that experience?
I think simply just the opportunity to learn, because at the end of the day, uh, we all are going to resonate differently with the trip. This being my second time through, I hope that I'm able to at least learn something new and be able to feel what I felt last year in a different capacity. But I hope that if nothing else, it spurs everybody on the trip with the desire to want to learn more and want to grow more. Because as we know, history repeats itself. And so for a lot of these students, they will have not had any knowledge of Black Wall Street before tomorrow. And so I think when they get home from the trip, my hope is that they will be empowered, they'll be inspired, they'll be relatively frustrated in the sense that there's a lot of similarities that are transpiring now that transpired back then. And so hopefully within that frustration, it charges them to want to be better. It charges them with the hope of really stepping out on maybe some relative faith to be more, do more, and become more.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, final question. Let's travel back 20 years. Give young Chad a piece of advice.
Oh man, that's a good question. 20 years ago, I would have been 11. So I was probably fifth or sixth grade. I would say be you unapologetically. I think that specifically within our culture, within our community, it's very easy for young people to conform. It's very easy for young people to dilute who they are, dilute who they are truly called to be for whatever reason. It's very easy for them to mitigate their own God-given abilities. And I would say be you unapologetically because for what you were getting made fun of or what you're currently going through, people are going to want to pay you for down the road. And so the more you can step into that, the more you can really cultivate those skills early, the better off you'll be.
Wow, that's dope. Well, I believe, man, you've given us a lot to chew on. You've given us some great advice and even some books and homework to read. So,
Yeah, I do what I can.
yeah, Chad Johnson, head coach, change agent, we appreciate you coming by.
And I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.